When you see Jason Statham on screen, you see a man who looks unshakable. He jumps from burning cars, fights 10 men at once, dives into the ocean, and always walks away with that stone-cold stare. He is the face of action films, a modern tough guy, a legend of cinema. But here's what you probably don't know. Before Hollywood, before fame, before the cars and the money, Jason Statham was just another kid from a small English town. He wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't handed success. He hustled. He failed. He sold fake jewelry on the streets just to get by. He spent years as a diver, chasing dreams that never seemed to pay off. He was rejected, overlooked, told he wasn't good enough. And yet, through grit, discipline, and a bit of luck, he went from being an anonymous street hustler to one of the highest-paid action stars in the world. This is not just a story about an actor. This is the story of how setbacks can become stepping stones, how rejection can fuel resilience, and how even a man with no connections, no safety net, and no guarantees can rise to the very top. Today, we dive deep into the life of Jason Statham, his childhood, his failures, his triumphs, and the lessons his journey holds for us all. Lesson 1. Childhood and Early Life, From the Streets to the Pool. Jason Statham wasn't born into Hollywood. He wasn't even born into comfort. He came into the world on July 26, 1967, in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, England, a small town known more for its coal mines than for opportunity. His father, Barry, worked as a street seller and lounge singer, while his mother, Eileen, was a dancer. Jason grew up in a working-class family where survival meant hustle, and hustle meant creativity. From a young age, Jason understood two things. His family didn't have much money, and if he wanted something, he had to find a way to earn it. His father taught him the art of street selling, how to convince someone that a trinket was worth more than it looked, how to talk fast, and how to make people laugh while they handed over cash. Jason would later joke that he didn't act in his early years, he hustled. He sold fake perfume, knockoff jewelry, and whatever else he could carry through the crowded streets of London. But there was another side to him. While other kids were content with football or hanging around, Jason discovered an unusual passion: diving. Not scuba diving, but competitive diving. By the time he was a teenager, he had joined Britain's national diving squad, where he trained rigorously for more than a decade. His natural athleticism, lean frame, and fearless spirit helped him excel. But here's the twist. Jason was good, but never quite good enough. He competed internationally, including the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games qualifiers, but never made it to the Olympics. He placed in respectable positions, sometimes in the top 12 at World Championships, but he was always in the shadow of others. Imagine spending years throwing yourself off platforms, training every day, and still falling short of the dream. It was crushing. This is the first great lesson of Jason's story. You can give your all and still not make it. That reality could have broken him. Many of his peers quit sports and disappeared into regular jobs. But Jason carried something from his upbringing: the resilience of a hustler. When one door closed, he didn't stop. He pivoted. Diving, though, wasn't wasted time. It built his body, discipline, and comfort with danger. He learned how to control his movements mid-air, how to trust his body, and how to face fear head-on. Later, when Hollywood directors asked him to leap from helicopters or fight underwater, Jason didn't need a stunt double. His years as a diver made him fearless in front of the camera. Still, his 20s weren't glamorous. After diving, he drifted, modeling gigs here and there, posing for sports brands like French Connection. He was broke more often than not.
He shared tiny flats with other struggling artists, scraped by with odd jobs, and sometimes went back to the streets to sell goods. Jason has often said that during this time, rejection was his constant companion. He wasn't the best diver, not the most handsome model, not the guy agents lined up to call back. But here's the key. He didn't stop showing up. He kept knocking on doors, and eventually luck found him. One day, while working with French Connection, he caught the attention of Guy Ritchie, a young filmmaker preparing his first big movie, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Ritchie didn't want polished actors. He wanted real people, guys who had lived life on the edge. Jason, with his hustler's past and no-nonsense attitude, fit perfectly. When Ritchie asked him to improvise a scene as a street vendor, Jason didn't act. He just did what he'd been doing since he was a teenager anyway. He charmed, he pushed, he sold. And Ritchie was sold on him. That chance meeting would change Jason's life forever. But at this point in our story, Jason wasn't a movie star. He was still just a hustler who had failed at diving, stumbled in modeling, and had nothing more than persistence keeping him afloat. And that persistence, that refusal to quit, would soon pay off.
Lesson 2. The Guy Ritchie Years, From Hustler to Actor. In the late 1990s, Jason Statham's life looked like a dead end. His diving career was over, modeling wasn't paying enough to cover rent, and at 30 years old, he was still hustling cheap goods on the streets just like he had as a teenager. But here's the thing about life. Sometimes the very skills you think are useless turn out to be your ticket to something bigger. For Jason, that skill was hustling. French Connection, a British fashion brand, had hired him for some modeling work. Nothing glamorous, just catalog shots, a paycheck that kept food on the table. But during this time, Jason met a young, ambitious filmmaker named Guy Ritchie. Ritchie was working on his debut feature film, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, 1998. He wasn't looking for polished actors from drama schools. He wanted authenticity, people who looked and sounded like the streets. When Ritchie first saw Jason, he noticed something different. Jason wasn't trying to be someone he wasn't. He had that natural intensity in his eyes, the kind of edge you can't fake. So Ritchie put him to the test. He gave Jason an audition, not in a studio, but in a real street vendor setup. He asked him to improvise, to sell fake jewelry just as he had done countless times before. Jason didn't hesitate. He slipped right into the role, pitching the goods, charming, intimidating, talking fast, making the sale. He wasn't acting. He was being himself. Ritchie loved it. This wasn't a man pretending to be a hustler. This was a hustler who knew the game inside out. That audition earned him his first movie role. In Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Jason played Bacon, a small-time con artist caught in a web of crime and chaos. The film was gritty, raw, and unlike anything else in British cinema at the time. Critics loved it, audiences loved it, and suddenly Jason Statham, a man who had never acted professionally before, was on the map. The success of Lock, Stock was followed by Snatch, 2000, where Jason played Turkish, a small-time boxing promoter caught up in gangster schemes alongside Brad Pitt and Benicio del Toro. This time, Jason wasn't just a side character. He was the narrator, the one who guided the audience through the madness. His voice, calm, sharp, with that distinctive Cockney accent, became instantly recognizable. Snatch was a hit worldwide, and just like that, Jason Statham went from an unknown hustler to a rising star. But let's pause here, because there's a deeper lesson. Jason didn't land these roles because of polished acting skills or Hollywood connections. He had neither. He landed them because he leaned into his past. He took what life had given him, years of selling on the streets, years of rejection, years of surviving, and turned it into authenticity on screen. Hollywood has plenty of actors who can memorize lines. What it doesn't have is many people who can make you believe every word they say. Jason could because he wasn't pretending. He was pulling from real life.
And this is where Jason's story teaches us something powerful. Your flaws, your struggles, your past, they can become your strength. The very things you think disqualify you can make you stand out. By the early 2000s, Jason Statham had carved out a niche for himself. He wasn't yet a global superstar, but directors and audiences knew one thing: when Statham was on screen, he was real. And soon, Hollywood would come calling.
Lesson 3. The Transporter. Jason becomes Hollywood's action star. After Lock, Stock, and Snatch, Jason Statham had carved out a reputation in Britain. He was the cool, street-smart guy with the sharp accent and dangerous charm. But as much as those films were celebrated, they were still cult hits, primarily in Europe. Hollywood hadn't yet embraced him. Jason was visible, but not bankable, not yet. That changed in 2002 when a French director named Luc Besson came calling. Besson was famous for creating stylish, fast-paced films like Léon, The Professional, and The Fifth Element. He had an idea for a new kind of action movie: sleek, European, and explosive. The story was simple: a mysterious driver with a code of honor who delivers packages, no questions asked. The film would be called The Transporter. Now here's the twist. Besson didn't want a traditional Hollywood leading man. He didn't want another pretty face. He wanted someone who looked real, someone who could fight, drive, and command the screen without a stunt double doing all the work. Someone dangerous, but relatable. Jason Statham fit the mold perfectly. When Jason auditioned, he didn't come in with Shakespearean training or a list of blockbuster credits. What he had was presence. Years of diving had given him control of his body. Years of hustling had given him confidence. Years of rejection had given him a chip on his shoulder. And when Besson saw him move, saw him fight, saw him on camera, he knew this was his guy. And just like that, Jason Statham went from supporting roles in gritty British films to his first lead role in an international action movie. The making of an icon. The Transporter was filmed in the south of France, filled with high-speed chases, martial arts sequences, and stunts that felt raw compared to Hollywood polish. Here's the key difference. Jason insisted on doing most of his own stunts. He drove the cars. He fought with fists and feet. He jumped, dived, rolled, everything short of setting himself on fire. Audiences noticed. When you watched Jason in The Transporter, you didn't see an actor pretending. You saw a man who looked like he could actually survive those fights, actually break those bones, actually escape that explosion. That authenticity became his trademark. Critics didn't all love the movie. Some thought the plot was thin, the dialogue cheesy, but audiences didn't care. They fell in love with Jason Statham. The film did modest business at the box office, but it became a massive hit on DVD in international markets, cementing Jason as a new kind of action hero. And then came the sequels. Transporter 2, 2005, and Transporter 3, 2008, turned him into a global brand. By then, he wasn't just an actor, he was the Transporter, the man in the suit, behind the wheel, with fists flying and a cold stare. Hollywood takes notice. After The Transporter, Hollywood finally opened its doors. Jason was cast in The Italian Job, 2003, starring alongside Mark Wahlberg and Charlize Theron. Again, he wasn't the biggest star on the poster, but audiences remembered him. They always remembered him. More roles followed. Crank, 2006, where he played a poisoned hitman racing against time. War, 2007, opposite Jet Li. And eventually, the Expendables franchise, where he stood shoulder to shoulder with legends like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jet Li. What set Jason apart from other action stars was his consistency. He didn't try to reinvent himself in rom-coms and dramas. He stayed in his lane, gritty, fast-paced, physical action. And in a world where many stars depended on CGI and stunt doubles, Jason built his brand on being authentic. If you saw him on screen, you could believe it. Lessons from Hollywood's reluctant hero.
Here's what Jason Statham's Hollywood breakthrough teaches us. 1. Authenticity beats polish. Jason wasn't the best trained actor, but he was real, and in a world of plastic performances, that was his edge. 2. Skills never go to waste. Years of diving, street hustling, and modeling, things that seemed like failures, became the foundation for his Hollywood persona. 3. Persistence pays. By the time Jason became the lead in The Transporter, he was 35, not 20, not 25. Many would have quit long before, but he kept showing up, and when the opportunity came, he was ready. Jason Statham's rise to Hollywood fame wasn't an accident. It was the result of years of failure, hard work, and a refusal to quit. The Transporter wasn't just a movie role. It was the door he had been waiting for his entire life. And once it opened, he never looked back.
Lesson 4. Building the Action Star Legacy. After the success of The Transporter, Jason Statham had proven himself as more than just a British hustler turned actor. He had shown the world he could lead an action film and make it believable. But sustaining a career in Hollywood is harder than breaking in. Many actors shine for one film and then disappear. The real test was whether Jason could build a legacy. Crank, Pushing the Limits. In 2006, Jason starred in Crank, a wild, adrenaline-fueled ride unlike anything audiences had seen before. He played Chev Chelios, a hitman poisoned with a drug that would kill him if his heart rate dropped too low. The only way to survive? Keep moving, keep fighting, keep the adrenaline pumping. The movie was insane. Shaky cameras, over-the-top action, a premise that sounded like a video game. But Jason threw himself into it. He sprinted through Los Angeles, fought in moving cars, rode a motorcycle in hospital gowns, all with his signature intensity. Critics were divided, but fans loved it. Jason wasn't just an action star. He was now the face of unapologetically wild cinema. And Crank did something important. It proved Jason could carry a franchise. Even when the plot was outrageous, his charisma made it work. The Expendables, Joining the Legends. By 2010, Jason had carved out his lane, but he wasn't yet in the league of legends like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Jet Li. That changed with The Expendables. Stallone wanted to gather the world's greatest action stars, past and present, into one explosive franchise. Jason was invited to play Lee Christmas, a knife-throwing mercenary with dry humor and deadly precision. For Jason, this was validation. He was no longer the outsider. He was standing shoulder to shoulder with the heroes he had grown up watching. The film was packed with muscles, explosions, and one-liners, but Jason still managed to stand out. His fight scenes were sharp, his presence undeniable. Audiences and critics alike agreed. Among the younger generation of stars in the cast, Jason was the standout heir to the action throne. And Stallone noticed. He once said Jason was the real deal, because unlike many actors, he didn't fake toughness, he lived it. The Expendables franchise ran through 3 films, 2010, 2012, 2014, grossing hundreds of millions worldwide. For Jason, it was more than money or fame. It was acceptance into the pantheon of action legends. Fast and Furious, a global phenomenon. If The Transporter made Jason a star, and The Expendables made him a legend, the Fast and Furious franchise made him a global powerhouse. He joined the saga in Fast and Furious 6, 2013, appearing in the post-credit scene as Deckard Shaw, the vengeful brother of a villain killed by Dominic Toretto's crew. His reveal was electrifying. Fans immediately knew he was going to shake things up. By Furious 7, 2015, Jason was front and center as the main antagonist, squaring off against Vin Diesel, Dwayne Johnson, and the rest of the family. The film was one of the highest-grossing movies of all time, earning over $1.5 billion worldwide. Jason's character was so popular that Universal couldn't leave him as just a villain. Over time, Shaw transformed into an anti-hero, tough, brutal, but ultimately likable. His chemistry with Dwayne Johnson led to the spin-off Hobbs and Shaw 2019, which grossed $760 million. By then, Jason Statham was no longer just an action star. He was a global brand, with his name alone capable of drawing crowds. Lessons from the action legacy. Jason's journey through these franchises highlights three key lessons. 1. Consistency builds trust. Jason never tried to reinvent himself as a romantic comedy lead or a dramatic actor. He knew his lane, gritty, physical action, and he stayed there. Audiences trusted him to deliver. 2. Authenticity resonates. Whether in Crank's chaos, Expendables explosions, or Fast and Furious billion-dollar car chases, Jason always did his own stunts. That made him stand out in an industry filled with green screens. 3. Partnerships matter. By joining forces with Stallone, Diesel, and Johnson, Jason aligned himself with giants. Collaboration expanded his reach far beyond what solo films could achieve. The cost of success. But let's not paint it all perfect. Jason's career wasn't without criticism. Some argued he played the same character in every film, the tough, no-nonsense fighter with little emotional range. Others said his movies relied on stunts over story. And yet that criticism never stopped him. Jason didn't chase awards or critical approval. He cared about the audience. If people bought tickets, if they cheered in theaters, if they left feeling entertained, that was success. And the numbers don't lie. By the mid-2010s, Jason Statham was one of the highest-grossing action stars in the world. From hustling fake jewelry on London streets to leading billion-dollar franchises, he had built something remarkable, a legacy of authenticity, toughness, and resilience.
Lesson 5. The man behind the action star. Jason Statham's on-screen image is one of absolute control. The guy who can handle anything, fight anyone, and never flinch. But off-screen, his journey hasn't been without setbacks, controversies, and very human struggles. Failures and near misses. For all his success, not every Jason Statham film hit the mark. Movies like In the Name of the King 2007 and War 2007 were critically panned, with reviewers calling them flat or cliché. For a while, some critics wrote him off as a B-movie actor, someone who could punch and drive cars but not sustain a meaningful story. Jason himself admitted frustration. He knew he wasn't a classically trained actor. He knew his range wasn't Shakespeare. But instead of chasing roles that didn't fit him, he doubled down on his strengths: authenticity, action, and grit. In a way, his failures refined him. They forced him to carve his own lane, instead of trying to compete where he couldn't win. The stunt that nearly killed him. One of Jason's closest brushes with death came during filming of The Expendables 3, 2014. While performing a stunt, the brakes on the truck he was driving failed, and the vehicle plunged off a cliff into the Black Sea. Jason escaped through the window and swam to safety, a real-life action sequence that could have ended tragically. Stallone later said, if anyone else had been in that truck, they would have died. Jason is the only guy who could have survived it. That moment reinforced his reputation as the real deal. But it also showed the risks of living his brand. Doing your own stunts isn't just marketing, it's life and death. Personal life and grounded roots. Despite his global fame, Jason Statham has remained surprisingly grounded. He avoids the Hollywood spotlight, preferring a private life. Since 2010, he's been in a relationship with model and actress Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. Together, they have 2 children, and Jason often credits fatherhood with softening his edges and giving him a sense of balance. He once joked that his son doesn't care about car chases or explosions, he just wants dad to build Legos with him. For a man whose on-screen persona is larger than life, those moments of normalcy are what keep him anchored. Lessons from his life. Jason's personal story is more than just box office numbers. It's about resilience, reinvention, and self-awareness. Number 1, embrace who you are. Jason didn't try to hide his Cockney accent or streetwise manner. He leaned into it, and it became his signature. Number 2, failure isn't final. Bombed movies, rejection, dead ends, none of it stopped him. Instead, each failure helped refine his path. Number 3, discipline outlasts talent. Jason wasn't the most talented actor, but his discipline, work ethic, and authenticity turned him into a global star. The legacy. Today, Jason Statham is not just an actor, he's a brand. His films may not always win Oscars, but they win something else: loyalty. Fans know exactly what they'll get when his name is on a poster: speed, grit, and real action. And perhaps that's his greatest legacy, proving that you don't need to fit the mold to succeed. You don't need perfect training or perfect timing or even perfect luck. What you need is grit, persistence, and the courage to turn your flaws into strengths. From a failed diver selling knockoff jewelry on London streets to one of the most bankable action stars alive, Jason Statham's story reminds us it's not about where you start, but how far you're willing to fight to go.